A regulation cornhole board is 2 feet wide by 4 feet long, which is the length of 1/90th of a football field, or one adult capybara. I started with a full sheet of plywood and cut it into 4 pieces. Marked the center of the hole with an awl and drew a circle with a compass. Then I drilled a hole and cut inside the line with a jigsaw. Cleaned up the edges with a foam sanding block and then a spindle sanding bit on my drill. To draw the circle on the second sheet, I just traced the one from the first piece. I used the router table with a 1/8 inch roundover bit on the circle and on the outside edges. For the support frame of the boards, I needed some 3/4 inch hardwood. I took some old mahogany and cut it to the length of the rails and stiles. Then ripped off one edge to get a clean surface and cut it into strips. I hand-planed both faces of the pieces, which was difficult because this mahogany has an interlocking grain pattern. The dirt on the wood was making my blade really dull. So on the other pieces, I used a cabinet scraper first. This scraped off the dirty outside layer, and then I was able to use the hand plane after resharpening it. Then I cut dados near each end to house the rails. These dados increase the strength of the frame, and they make it easier to assemble. I also cut a dado near the middle. This holds a center support rail, which is important to prevent the plywood from acting like a trampoline when a bag lands in the middle of the board. I decided to use pocket holes for attaching the top, since I'd be able to hide all the screws. I also used 2 pocket holes on the ends of each rail for attaching them to the stiles. I used a 1/8 inch roundover bit on all the edges that won't be against the top. The next step is to make the legs. For this, I needed to make some square pieces of wood, so I used some scraps of teak I had lying around. Then I cut it to length and angled some cuts for the feet. I drilled holes through the tops of the legs off camera, and then sanded them to make the ends round. This will allow the piece to rotate without hitting the board. I drilled some holes for the carriage bolts to go through the stiles. This is where the legs will attach. Then I dropped a carriage bolt into the hole and tapped it a couple times to make a square-shaped indentation. I put the whole frame together on top of the board and glued the ends of the rails, then clamped them in place. I also clamped the frame down to the table to make sure it was flat. Notice the big weight on the table. In addition to keeping my arms super swole, it also serves to flatten the plywood, which had warped since I originally cut it. I finished the whole board with oil-based spar urethane. Normally I thin out my polyurethanes, but since this was my first time using spar urethane, I followed the instructions and didn't thin it. It wipes on very thick like syrup and is kind of hard to apply. Adding some mineral spirits would have been a good idea and made this process much easier. Once it had dried, I taped off a pattern and spray painted it. Then I just added a couple more layers of spar urethane. I attached the legs to the stiles using a carriage bolt, some nylon washers, and a lock nut. Thank you so much for watching, and please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video.